Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 503. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and highly talented author and playwright, Lauren Ennis. Lauren.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you so much for the intro.
So for folks then, Lauren, for meeting you for the first time, what kind of stories do you feel called to write?
So I'm a major history junkie, have been ever since I was a kid, favorite subject. And because history is so weird and it's always weirder than anything you could come up with on your own. And I would just sit there as a kid and be like, no, that didn't happen. That can't be right. And I would just get lost down all these rabbit holes. And I was, always loving historical fiction. I loved it. It was like a way as a kid to time travel without having to leave your room. And you could see the world through all these stories and learn about all these cultures and all these different major events and kind of see like what was it like for people then. And so to this day, I still love historical fiction, and I love to see ordinary people trying to deal with extraordinary circumstances. Like that's always what I come back to over and over is people just trying to get through the day, and then somehow their whole world becomes upended. And who are you really when you're in that situation?
So the thing is, like, Daughters of Attrition and Boy's Best Comrade, one's a graphic novel, the other one is prose. Um, how did you decide what medium you were going to write each one in?
Well, for Daughters of Attrition, that's the only time I've ever done a graphic novel. It's sort of my experimental project. So, full disclosure on that one, went in totally seat of my pants, kind of got in over my head on that one. But that was originally a screenplay. And
Okay.
the thing is with screenplays, they're so hard to get anything ever filmed or even with stage plays to get something performed. And I really wanted to be able to share it because it was a story that, was really close to my heart, and to see how, because, I was a kid during 9/11 and when we went into Afghanistan, and they always told us that, we were going to help all these women and girls and, to be able to liberate them and give them a new life. And then to see how things went so wrong, and to see like girls my age and what their lives would be like and what they would have turned out as. So I really wanted to be able to share that. And I thought, well, I started hearing different podcasts and things, and people would talk about graphic novels and comic books and how you can take a stage play or a screenplay and adapt it. And the girls in the story make their own story, make their own comic book, because one of them is not literate, but she's an amazing artist and a storyteller. And the other one is, very much a bookworm. So they combine their skills and they use this comic book that they make together to cope with everything that's happening around them. And it's sort of a metaphor and a story within a story. And they project themselves onto these characters. One of them's this brave warrior who can face everything and has no fears, and the other one's the noble good prince, and really she was a very poor orphan, so she can kind of live through that fantasy of what would I do if I had the power, if I was able to help other people.
And so then what does the Kabul orphanage setting allow you to explore then?
To explore the ways in which global events and trauma affect ordinary people, and especially kids, to be able to see war and conflict from a child's perspective, and to be able to see how that impacts them and how that impacts their perspective of the world, and what it takes for them to cope with that, and to be able to find the resilience to be in not just resilience, but the support amongst each other to be able to rise up and cope with and overcome that adversity.
And so the characters in there is Laila and Noor, correct?
Right.
Okay. How do you describe their characters? I know like Layla's described as kind of rebellious and artistic, right?
Yeah, Layla is was orphaned, and she was found pickpocketing and taken into the orphanage. And she's sort of, if you ever saw Hey Arnold, she's kind of like Helga. So she's this very smart mouth, sassy, kind of fresh kid, but actually has a heart of gold and this very artistic, poetic soul underneath it all. And that's sort
And,
of, tough exterior to handle everything.
Right. And what about Noor? What's her
And
per
Noor is the much more straight edge, rule following girl who sort of finds her rebellious streak through being friends with Laila. And she's much more from the stable background and much more, this is the right way to do things. This is how we go about things. And then she kind of has her whole worldview rocked by this friendship.
how did you approach writing fear and danger without overwhelming young readers then as a graphic novel?
So what I tried to do is just bring it in from how kids would talk about and describe things. Like they'll say, "Oh, there was bombing down the street," so they can hear it happening from the orphanage, or we had to go downstairs into the basement.
Hmm.
And we had to, hide, or we have to start, censoring these certain things and not studying these things because of what's happening outside. And what I did was I ended up to be able to fit the screenplay down because it was hour and a half to 2 hours long into a graphic novel. You only have so
Right.
many pages. And so what I did is it just is Noor's letters home to her mother, because what happens is her father's killed assisting the American forces against the Taliban. So what a lot of women were doing at that time was putting children, especially girls, into orphanages for safekeeping until they could find the resources to bring them home, because many of them weren't allowed to work and earn an income.
Right.
So what it is I just said had to be that she's writing all these letters home. So it's like quick summaries of here's what's been happening, here's how things are progressing on the outside. Here's my general impression of this. I'm scared, or I'm, lonely, or, oh, my friend was telling me about this thing. We have students who are leaving and they're leaving in the middle of the night and no one knows why, and that kind of thing. So you see, like, from an adult perspective, the bigger picture, but you're seeing it from that kid's view of, they understand it at very surface level.
Well, that gets me to my next question then too, is like what role does imagination play in survival in the story then?
Well, what it is where they're making their own story. That's their creative outlet, and that helps them where they can talk about these characters that they make up who are fighting all these battles and overcoming all these monsters, and they can say, "Well, that could be us. We can overcome this." And here's when all these dark things come to us, we have our own bravery, we have our own resilience, and it's sort of a way that they can cope with it in through this metaphor.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. When you're writing like real world trauma adjacent stories like this, what is your personal line that you definitely will not cross, even if the aspect for the readers?
I definitely wouldn't cross anything into, anything graphic or anything that would be for this age level. I kept it
Right.
very much like war related violence. I know obviously there's things like if you ever read Kite Runner or you read Thousand Splendid Suns that get much more heavily into the legal persecution of people or to the personal violence. So I kept it in a way that most kids are familiar with. Even if you see like a Disney movie, you'll see the villain leads an army. You'll
Mm.
see, that people can get killed in battle or people don't come home. So I kept it more on that broader scale so that it's still traumatic, but it's not overly graphic or something that a child wouldn't be able to understand or wouldn't be able to relate to.
Okay. What do you hope like an adult reader or educator takes from Daughters of Attrition?
I would just hope some to remember it, because I think it's one of those events that really kind of disappeared from the news very quickly, unfortunately. And I hope we can just kind of learn from it and not repeat the same cycles again.
What scene then was hardest for you to write emotionally in the story?
The ending where Noor gets on the plane to go home or to go with her family abroad, and they aren't there. They're just separated, and Layla and the other girls are still back in the orphanage, and we don't know what happens to her because so many kids, we don't know what happened to them, and a lot of them were separated from their families and from their friends, and so that to me, that ambiguous ending and having them separated.
Right. So I'm curious to know, we're looking at A Boy's Best Comrade, which is not a graphic novel. This is actually um, a 310 page book.
Uh, that's for the ebook. The paperback's only 265,
Okay, it's only 265.
which I know for middle school kids is still hefty.
A Boy's Best Comrade is set in Moscow, 1938, right?
Right.
So why Moscow, 1938? That is that. I'm wondering too. Is this something from your days where having a really good play, you have to really pick a really engaging protagonist in a really engaging like time. So
Wish I could say it was something that well thought out, but honestly, I've always been obsessed with Russian literature and Russian history.
yeah,
I don't know why. It might have come from watching too much figure skating as a kid. Go figure. But when this particular story came from, of all things, a dog trivia calendar, because I'm a crazy
really,
dog lady. And on one of the days, it said, "Did you know, fact of the day, that there are packs of stray dogs in Moscow that have taught themselves how to ride the Moscow metro and commute in and out of the city every day?"
what?
Yeah, and you can look, there's documentaries on them, there's a video game on them. It's insane. And they put like the
Wow.
little geo trackers on them, and you can see them go in and out of the city. And they run scams. They have like little doggy street gangs. And they have a whole system worked out where they send the little cute ones out to like play sick and get sympathy and then try to pick people's pockets. And then if that doesn't work, they send the big scary ones out to either try to knock people down or scare them and get them to drop their food or drop whatever. And it's this whole like Oliver Twistian thing that these dogs created.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's insane.
Talk a little bit. So Sasha is the name of the dog.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And I got that idea because I was trying to think of a good dog name that would be easy for, most Western
Right.
readers. And then I thought, oh, ho, I have a dog with a Russian name. Why am I not using that? And then when I looked it up, and that Sasha means friend and protector of mankind, I'm like, oh my gosh, it pretty much means man's best friend. That's perfect. So then
Uh,
I just wrote her into the story.
right. So there seems like you're kind of focusing a little bit on that. You're taking your main protagonists to be like avatars of like innocence in a way, because you're done with children, and now you're having a dog as the protagonist here too, right?
Definitely. And the way I write the dogs, they're kind of just like furry kids.
Right. So, what would you say? What do animals allow you to show about humanity that's harder to show otherwise?
That's a great question. I'd say that using animals is great because, on the one hand, like I said, they can be kind of like furry kids in that innocence. But at the same time, because they have to survive on their own, they can be a lot savvier and a lot more street smart than your average like, young protagonist would be. And it's just fun to be able to see they can almost represent like different ideologies or different ideas within the system. Like the cats tend to be that are in the book, they're much more savvy in that they're like, well, people are just temporary and you never know who's going to inform on you. And that's why, we just see humans as like roommates and we don't really take them seriously. Whereas the house animals, the house dogs, much more think that they have a false sense of complacency and safety. They think, oh, well, because it's a recurring thing throughout the book, the party makes no mistakes. This had to have been a mistake, but the party doesn't make mistakes. So how does that happen? And so they're more like the average citizenry who, thinks that the system will take care of them, will inevitably work out. And then you have the street dogs who are much savvier and know their way around, and more would be like the kind of people who could run the black market and who would find workarounds and be more the dissidents and that kind of thing.
Okay. What was your biggest challenge writing a survival on the streets themed book for middle grade children?
Trying to find a way to make it so that it's real without
Right.
it becoming overly bleak. So I tried to, as much as possible, put some humor into it. The way I did that was, honestly, I was obsessed with Don Bluth movies as a kid. So I loved like All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah.
And when it showed, Anne Marie's this little orphan in 1930s New Orleans with these junkyard dogs trying to survive, or like Oliver and Company. And you see, Oliver's essentially like an orphan kid with, Dodger and Fagin, because it's supposed to be Oliver Twist. So to me, that made it a lot easier in that regard. So if you could, put humor in and add sort of this madcap element to it, it keeps the pacing up and it keeps it so that they're still having fun while they're learning something.
Okay. How did you decide when to explain historical context versus just letting the story go in the direction that were just seeing where it goes?
That was a tough one. Honestly,
Yeah.
there was definitely times where I would just send pages to my mom and be like, "Hi, what do you think of this?" And there'd be times she'd be like, "This is great, I love it." She'd be like, "But here's the thing, I get it because you're my kid and you talk about this stuff 24/7." She's like, "No normal American's going to get this, and no American kid is going to get this." So I'd have to be like, "Oh, okay, I got to break it down. Sorry." And then my editor, who's my high school English teacher, she's amazing. She's family at this point. But she would definitely call me out on certain things and be like, "Is this that realistic? Or where's your research? You got to break this down for me." Like at one point, she said, "Why are they reading Sherlock Holmes? They aren't going to know about Arthur Conan Doyle." And I'm like, no, he was the most popular black market writer. Stalin had him banned because he liked to go to seances and was a spiritualist. And Stalin didn't want people believing in ghosts. And she's like, "Well, you got to explain that. That's a fun bit of history. Tell people that."
For readers who say we're sensitive, what would you tell them about the emotional intensity?
I'd put it on level with your average old school Disney movie. I'd
Okay.
put this on there. I'd call it like a Lady and the Tramp and Oliver and Company. And I can promise no dogs were harmed in the production of this book. Because that's the biggest thing. I've had adults say, "No, I can't do it. I don't do sad dog stories. I can't read it." And
Right.
I'll just say to them, "No, I promise you can handle this. I'm not going to go old Yeller on you. I promise."
So, Lauren, if someone can only start with one of your books, which one should they read? Would it be one of these, or would it be one of your screenplays or plays? What would you, if
I'd
someone say,
say Boy's Best Comrade, because I mean, I just finished that. That's the, Daughters of Attrition came out after, but Boy's Best Comrade's the one I did most recently. So I'm always that person. Whatever I just worked on is always like that's closest to my heart. And plus, I'm going to be spinning that one off into a sequel project. So I want to keep the interest going for that.
so Lauren, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where is the best place they could go to?
You can go to laurenennis.com. And I'm also on Instagram at Ennis. Oh, God, I think it's 6813. Sorry, trying to remember the numbers. I just got back on social media after a few years, so I'm still trying to get the hang of it. But laurenennis.com is great.
Well, thank you, Lauren. Listen, you're gonna have to come back on once you get another book out. This is
Thank
exciting
you so
stuff.
much.
Yeah.
It'll be amazing.